Today we're going to cover the geography of ancient Egypt. In today's lesson, we are going to cover where Egypt is located in the world. We are also going to discuss how the Nile River impacted life in ancient Egypt. Let's begin with where Egypt is located in the world. Egypt is on the African continent. It is in the northeast corner of the African continent. It is bordered by the Mediterranean Sea to its north and the Red Sea to its east. In Egypt, the main landform of Egypt is known as the Nile River. The Nile River is the longest river of the world. Its waters flows south to north, which is unusual because most water flows north to south. We'll talk about the importance today of the Nile River as we go through today's notes. There are two main ideas that I want you to gain from today's notes. Egypt was called the Geta the Nile because the Nile River gave life to the deserts. That's the first one. The second one is that civilization developed along the Nile River after people began farming in this region. So we're going to discuss different aspects of those two main ideas as we go on. The first main idea. Egypt was called the Geta the Nile because the Nile River gave life to desert. But why? The Nile River brought life to Egypt and allowed it to thrive, allowed it to build, allowed it to build into the prominence that it gained over time. There were 2 floods every year of the Nile River. Now, as a result of these 2 floods, farming became possible around the Nile River. The Nile flooded, gave crops and the land a more moist soil, so farming was enriched and farmland became that much more prominent around the Nile River. There are several features of the Nile. The Nile is the longest river in the world. It ranges from about 4,000 miles long. Ancient Egypt is included 2 regions, a southern and a northern region that were given their names by the relation to the Nile River. Upper Egypt, Middle Egypt, and Lower Egypt. At several points, the rough terrain caused cataracts or rapids to form, which you'll see later on in the map that I give you. The Nile also was divided into several branches, forming a delta or a triangular area of land made from soil deposited by the river itself. Now, we're going to talk about later on in our unit the pharaoh that took the Nile areas, the southern and northern region, and combined them into one Egypt. But we're going to talk about that later on in our unit itself. The floods of the Nile. Little rain fell in the Egyptian desert, but the Nile flooded every year in the summer and the fall. That's that biannual flooding that we were talking about earlier. The Nile's flooding coated the land around it with a rich silt that made the soil ideal for farming. This rich silt made the crops more plentiful, made the farmland more plentiful, made it where farmers would want to plant crops around the Nile River. Without the floods, it would simply be just a desert area. It would be an area where you could never have farmed in Egypt. So due to these floods, it made farmland that much more prominent around the Nile River. The second main idea I want you to learn from the geography of ancient Egypt is that civilization developed along the Nile after people began farming in this region. So due to farming, people began to live around the Nile River. The Nile provided both water and fertile soil for farming. So due to farmland, people began to live there. Egypt's location offered an additional advantage because it had natural barriers that made it hard to invade. Think about it. On one side of Egypt, you had the Sahara Desert, okay? And on the other side, you had the Red Sea the Mediterranean Sea and the Nile River that these barriers built for the people of ancient Egypt. It would make it that much more difficult for invaders to come in because either you're going to burn up in the Sahara Desert, you're going to possibly die because of heat exhaustion and without water, or you're going to come down the Nile River and they're going to basically pick you down, or it's going to basically be a turkey shoot down the Nile River because you have no protection. Or you come down the Red Sea and you're still going to be doomed because either way, there's no protection on either side. So these are the natural barriers it's referring to: the Sahara Desert, the Nile River, the Red Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. Although over time, these natural barriers would be used for trading and other ways that we'll talk about later on in our year. The Nile Valley. Canals were built to carry water to the fields of wheat, barley, fruits, and vegetables. They had to figure out a way to get the water to the fields. That's when these canals were built. They were basically dug ditches, basically, to bring the water from the Nile River to the wheat fields, to the barley fields, to the fruit fields, to the vegetable fields. The Nile also allowed farmers to raise animals such as cattle and sheep. It allowed these animals to get water when they needed it, so the farmers could actually raise these cattle and sheep livestock. The river also provided many types of fish to eat, and hunters began to trap duck and geese as well. So the Nile wasn't only for water, it also became a reason for food, a reason for resources, a reason for canals, and even additional reasons, natural barrier reasons as well. Natural barriers made Egypt hard to invade. Desert in the west, the Sahara Desert that we were talking about, was too big and harsh to cross. The Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea provided protection from invasion, and the cataracts in the Nile made it difficult to invade from the south. So, all these natural barriers, the cataracts, the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, and the Sahara Desert and other deserts, made it that much more difficult for the invaders from other countries to invade. Now, this ends the Nile River and ancient Egypt's impact in regards to geography. As we move on through this unit, we will talk about additional impacts that geography had in Egypt. We'll talk about how the pyramids, or why the pyramids were built where they were, and it relates directly to the Nile River. But that's more to come in this unit. Today we are going to now we're going to end the geography lesson for today.